Hi, my name is Raj Sharma. I'm the managing partner of Stewart Sharma Harshani, one of Canada's largest dedicated immigration law firms. Today I'd like to share with you 7 tips for winning your refugee claim. The refugee hearing, at least in the Calgary region, is held at the IRB offices located at 201-225 Manning Road Northeast. Your claim may be heard by a RPD member in Calgary, or it may be heard by video conference. You've got to understand, and there's significant research on this, primarily by Professor Sean Rahag of Osgoode Hall, that one of the main determinants of the outcome of your hearing is something outside of your control, and it is the identity of the particular RPD member assigned to your hearing. So my first tip was going to be that you pick the RPD member to determine your claim. Unfortunately, this is not possible. So my first actual tip is to pick an experienced immigration lawyer. Success or failure on your refugee claim depends more than just the identity of the particular Refugee Protection Division member assigned to your claim. It also depends on the counsel and lawyer that you choose to represent you. There's a Stanford Law publication called Refugee Roulette, and it shows that the difference between a claimant that's represented by experienced legal counsel and a refugee asylum seeker or claimant that is unrepresented is significant. An unrepresented claimant, at least in the US, has a 16% chance of succeeding, whereas represented by counsel, you're looking at 46%. That is very, very significant. Research the lawyer that you want to represent you at the hearing. Ask him or her the tough questions. Ask them how many hearings they've done before the Refugee Protection Division. Ask them how many hearings they've done with respect to the particular country that you're from. Ask them how many times they've been to the federal court seeking judicial review of a refused or negative refugee decision. Ask them whether they have any experience before the Refugee Appeal Division. Ask them how many years they've been practicing. You owe it to yourself to choose the best possible legal representation for this most important hearing. My second tip is straightforward. You've got to prepare, and preparation is key. Tip number 3, this is often overlooked. Ensure the accuracy of interpretation. An interpreter will be provided by the board if you're not going to testify in English or French. The quality of interpretation is very, very important. Where possible, have someone that you know and trust that has facility in English and in your language attend the hearing with you. Your lawyer may not have any facility in the language that you are going to be speaking. And it's vitally important that the question that's asked of you by the member is interpreted to you in your language properly and accurately, and that the answer you provide in your language is properly interpreted into English by the interpreter. There may be occasions where inadequacy of interpretation leads to adverse credibility findings. If the member comes to a decision that you're not answering these questions directly, or you're beating around the bush, or that your answers don't make sense. So be very mindful of this. Any issues with interpretation must be raised at that time and not after the fact. So if there are any issues about interpretation, make sure you bring them to the board member's attention. Tip number 4 is to make sure that your basis of claim form contains all the material and relevant grounds for your claim for protection. There should be no errors or omissions or contradictions within this form. Don't think that you can add to the basis of claim form later. If you add something later, the board member might say that that was an omission from the basis of claim form and might make a negative credibility finding against you. Make sure it's all in that basis of claim form. This is vitally important. Tip number 5, you've got to gather all the relevant evidence that corroborates your claim. You and your lawyer should be tracking down this information and making sure that this information is submitted to the board in accordance to the RPD rules and well in advance of the hearing. Your lawyer should perhaps retain experts and solicit expert testimony with respect to country condition evidence, or may retain and you may want to have an expert testify as to the mental trauma suffered or your physical condition, and that could corroborate your claim as well. Tip number 6 is to educate yourself. Don't rely on the board member or even your own lawyer. You should make sure that you understand what's involved in a refugee hearing. You should know the procedure to some extent. For example, you should know that the board member generally begins questioning and that your lawyer asks questions after the board member is done. Again, I've said this before in other videos. If you don't know the answer to a question, say, "I don't know." Try not to guess. If you are guessing, say that you're guessing. You may be asked about inconsistencies between your story or your basis of claim form and what you told immigration at the port of entry, or inconsistencies between what you're alleging and the country condition evidence. Be prepared to deal with these inconsistencies and to explain them. Tip number 7. Your lawyer must know the facts and must know the jurisprudence of all the issues that are screened. Jurisprudence in this area is changing all the time. For example, you may in fact fall within the definition of a refugee even if you're the victim of a crime. Refugee claims are very technical. They involve these complex issues. For example, they involve concepts such as state protection and internal flight alternative. Both of these issues can be determinative of your claim. There's caveats and jurisprudence surrounding both of these concepts. Make sure this is not your lawyer's first rodeo. Make sure your lawyer is not learning this area of the law at your expense. Finally, if you lose your refugee hearing, you may have the option of appealing to the Refugee Appeal Division or perhaps to the federal court if you're from a designated country. My advice is to prepare and do your best at the refugee hearing itself. I hope these tips were of assistance to you. I wish you the best of luck in your refugee hearing. If you have any questions regarding refugee law or any other aspect of immigration law, please feel free to contact one of the lawyers at Stuart Sharma Harshani. We look forward to assisting you.